This country was built on slavery, which means slaves built this country. The slaves in America have earned reparations for their suffering.
And continue to earn reparations every moment we spend submerged in the systemic prejudice, racism, and white supremacy.
God damn, that was racist.
What's up, guys? Penny. Let's go ahead and check in on the slow motion train wreck Key and Peele sketch that is the modern day state of left-wing politics in America. Brandon Johnson, the mayor of Chicago, and absolutely no relation to yours truly, who definitely has 50 points on this guy in IQ tests, had only 50 people shot in Chicago last weekend. That's a great increase. It only is a little bit more than most of the war zones in Ukraine. Anyway, the point is that he held a teeny little protest against President Trump, sending in federal resources to save the citizens of Chicago's lives. He's very angry about this, and he decided to declare that slaves built Chicago. Bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off.
Prepared to defend this land that was built by slaves, a land that was built by indigenous people, a land that is built by workers. Are you prepared to defend this land? The people united will always prevail. I need you all to stand firm, to stand strong.
So just platitudes, kind of just straight out of the woke playbook. You can see here it's like kind of like a indistinguishable from a Disney Plus cartoon.
This country was built on slavery.
A real Disney
Plus.
Built this country. Tilled this land from sea to sea to
Why
sea.
didn't,
First it was rice, tobacco, sugar cane. Then Whitney did his thing and cotton became king. And we were
Why?
4 million strong, fighting for America's freedoms, even though we
Remained America's slaves.
built this country. The descendants of slaves continue to build this.
Okay, so like again, if your political speech is indistinguishable from a canceled woke DEI Disney cartoon, then you got some real problem. But he also has a couple of problems in just, well, historical fact. So did Illinois ever have slaves? And was Chicago built by slaves? Well, the answer to that is found in the facts here. The answer is no, of course. However, Illinois did have like quasi-slavery. It's called indentured servitude, is brought here by the French settlers who were settling sort of the Northwest Ordinance, but the Northwest Ordinance banned slavery. So they had like indentured servitude. All of that was outlawed by the Illinois Supreme Court in 1820. Let's go ahead and check in at what did Chicago look like in 1820? What was the here's a nice photo, a painting of Chicago. Here's Chicago in 1820. If slaves built this, they didn't build much. You didn't work that hard. There's nothing there. There's nothing. There is nothing there. There's a couple teepees. Okay, got it. There's like a little look like a little farmhouse. That's it. So no, I don't think slaves built Chicago. And more important argument to this entire point is that Illinois fought with the Union, strongly with the Union. Illinois is where Abraham Lincoln is from. Maybe you've heard of him, Brandon Johnson. Much of the abolitionist movement had its roots in Illinois, and Chicago as a city itself, well, wasn't even founded, really, until the later 1800s. The modern city was incorporated in 1837. That's almost 20 years after slavery was banned outright, and what they called it was indentured servitude, actually, quasi-slavery brought in by the French settlers and explorers. But Chicago wasn't even like a real city until 1837. That was the first time it was actually incorporated by northern businessmen. And that's it. It grew quickly after that. But there you go. Here's a historical Chicago homicide rate. Fascinating. You can see right here. Boy, I wonder what happened, right? I wonder what happened right through here in the modern era. It's a mystery. It really is. It's a mystery. Anyway, The point is that no, slaves did not build Chicago. You illiterate moron. Slaves built Chicago. Chicago was not built by slaves. Illinois was a Union state, and slavery was completely outlawed in the state of Illinois 20 years before Chicago's founding. You jackass. People are so dumb. It's treason. This is treason. Brandon Johnson should be arrested, charged, convicted, and given the requisite punishment for capital offense. Chicago was not in any sense built by slaves and indigenous people. I mean, again, we have like photos of what Chicago looked like. This was Chicago in 1812. There was, nothing. Does this look like the Chicago? Does this look like a Chicago today? So this is what the indigenous people built. You can see some indigenous people here in canoes. I'm sure they were lovely. This is what Chicago looks like with indigenous people and no slaves building it. Okay, these were most likely white Christian settlers. And this is what Chicago looks like today. Do you see the difference? Do you see the difference? This is what indigenous people made, and this is what was built after slavery was completely abolished in the state. Indentured servitude was abolished, and after the indigenous people were, who knows where they were moved? I don't know. But yeah, to say that it was built by indigenous people, no. Again, when your political speech is indistinguishable from a Disney cartoon, Disney Plus cartoon, you have a real problem. Well, let's be clear. The land, Chicago, was not built by slaves, nor was it built by indigenous people. I would expect a teacher to know this, but the moronic president of CTU history is not their strong suit. So it was this guy. This guy was the president of the Chicago Teachers Union. He was the president of Chicago Teachers Union. It sounds like he's asking Chicagoans to rise up against the U.S. government. President Trump was accused of inciting an insurrection. He said less during January 6th. That's exactly right. And not a good look. Chicago wasn't built by slaves or indigenous people. It sounds a lot like a call for insurrection along with violence. Slaves and Indians built Chicago. Yeah. 58 people shot during Labor Day weekend in Chicago last weekend. Chicago's Labor Day bloodbath. Even Joe Scarborough is losing his mind over this. Joe Scarborough snapping on the leaders of Chicago, saying, you guys are really stupid for the game that you're playing right now with Trump.
You have leaders in Chicago that see this, as you say. We've been reading about this for years now, every weekend, and maybe crime has gone down. But, we had the mayor of Chicago on last week saying, oh, we don't need any more police officers. Police officers aren't the answer. No police officers. I think he said no 5 times. You look what's happening this weekend. You look so, I actually think that J.B. Pritzker should do something radical. I think he should pick up the phone, call the president, and say, and I know you don't have the constitutional authority to deploy the National Guard here and to police you can do that in D.C., you can't do that in Chicago. But let's partner up. These are the most dangerous parts of my state. We would love to figure out how to have a partnership that's constitutional, that respects the sort of balance of federalism between the federal government and the state government. And let's work together to save lives. Because right now, just hey, nothing to see here moving along. No problem here. Hey, Donald Trump, we don't need you. And, the mayor talking about we're going to protect people's dignity in our city. Well, protect their lives. That's protecting their dignity. It would be radical for us to figure out a way to actually do what I've been saying from the very beginning on Washington, and that is seeing politicians creating partnerships that protect their people.
This follows critically low approval ratings for Brandon Johnson as mayor. And nobody likes this guy. Johnson sees approval ratings low in new poll. His residents are rising up against him. He wants an additional $70 million for illegals. Where's the money come from? And now President Trump says we are going in with the National Guard. Breaking news. Now it's time to move into Chicago the greatest crime crackdown we've ever seen. The Trump administration has my full support. Here we go, baby. Trump says we're going to do it. Let's rock and roll.
Lined up on Chicago, though?
Well, we're going in. I didn't say when. We're going in. When you lose, look, I have an obligation. This isn't a political thing. I have an obligation. When we lose, when 20 people are killed over the last 2.5 weeks, and 75 are shot with bullets. So let me tell you a little story about a place called D.C., District of Columbia, right here where we are. It's now a safe zone. We have no crime. It's in such great shape. You can go and actually walk with your children, your wife, your husband. You can walk right down the middle of the street. You're not going to be shot, Peter.